Welcome to the Circle+Bloom podcast, How Einstein Would Get Pregnant. I'm so excited to share with you today my conversation with the powerhouse of Davina Fankhauser. She is a fierce advocate for women's infertility rights, in particular as it relates to insurance benefits, and is doing some incredible work through her foundation called Fertility Within Reach. It's actually a nonprofit based in Massachusetts. You can find it at fertilitywithinreach.org, and it is a wonderful resource for patients who are wanting to learn more about how to advocate on their own behalf to get additional insurance benefits. Davina's story with fertility started back when she was in her early 20s. She was married, I think, at the age of between 22 and 23 years old, and was diagnosed early on with endometriosis. So her fertility struggle started at that tender young age and lasted for 15 years. 15 years. And we started to run through the numbers, which you'll hear in the podcast, in terms of the number of miscarriages, the number of IVFs, the number of times she was pregnant with multiples, the number of times she had to go in for additional either surgeries or procedures. It's kind of mind-blowing. I don't think I could have done what she has done. She talks about the pressure that struggle put on their marriage and the decisions that were made, all without insurance. So she came through that with two beautiful children. And if you look at her Facebook page, you will know quickly how devoted she is and how much she loves being a mother now. But just the sheer determination that she's honest as well in terms of the fact that she didn't always feel that way. And she talks about how things started to change when she implemented meditation and mind-body work while she was trying to conceive. So we talk about how she found that faith to continue to try to conceive. We talk about the decisions that they needed to make as a couple. We talked about her miscarriages in the selective reduction process. We talk about why being a patient advocate can mean the difference between success and failure through advanced fertility issues. And we talk about major life lessons learned and how to go through such a difficult process and come out stronger the other side. And Davina certainly does not lack in strength. Michael Dukakis, I have this in the blog post, said about Davina that he said, "I thought Kitty," who's his wife, was the most tenacious advocate I had ever known until I met Davina. And I think that's right. So enough of me talking. Here is Davina Fankhauser. I definitely recommend checking out her website and the services that she provides at fertilitywithinreach.org. Enjoy. Really appreciate, Davina, you taking the time today. Our professional lives have definitely crossed many, many times, and it's always just a treat to work with you and to see all the wonderful things that you're doing and the passion that you bring to this fertility community. So thank you for being on the Circle+Bloom podcast today.
Thank you. It is my pleasure. And I think we share a mutual respect and appreciation because, I am a big fan of what Circle+Bloom has to offer people. And I enjoy at each time there's an opportunity for us to connect and collaborate.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's terrific. Davina, the work that you're doing with Fertility and Reach, we'll get to, but I love to kind of start with the backstory and how, your personal experience. And I know I actually just watched a video of you talking about Fertility Within Reach, and you talked about the fact that your infertility process or journey was 15 years. Is that correct?
I know we have to laugh about it,
I
right?
don't mean to laugh, but
No, it's ridiculous. And I think, some people do hold out that long, and I think most people don't. But yeah, it started, I was married young at 22, and at 23, I was diagnosed with endometriosis.
Mm-hmm.
And the doctor said, if you want to have kids, you should try to get pregnant right away. And so at the young age of 23, we started trying to conceive, and nothing happened and I'd had a surgery and still an laparoscopy for endometriosis. And for a year, nothing happened. And then we went to see a urologist, and my husband had male factor infertility. He had something called a varicocele, where it's like a varicose vein that collects in the testicle, and it creates a lot of heat, and it can negatively impact your sperm count. And with the motility and the vitality and the number. And so he required a surgery. After continuing to try doing intrauterine inseminations with the sperm count he had, we were not successful. And after 3 years of trying, he had a varicocele repair. And I did become pregnant on our own, and then I would miscarry. And that would happen like every December. I would get pregnant, and then by every February, I would miscarry. And that happened several years in a row. And the doctors just kept telling me, well, it's been so long since you had a pregnancy. It's just naturally, it's just statistics. So, you'll eventually, it'll happen. So they didn't consider the recurrent miscarriages at the OBGYN, who supposedly specialized in infertility, didn't pick up on that there might be a reason that was happening. And everywhere we lived, there was no insurance coverage for infertility treatment. And we really, even though we both worked and we were very middle class, we simply could not afford IVF, which we were told was what we needed to get pregnant. Fast forward this, I'm now 30 and living in a state that had benefits. Our employer, my husband's employer, they are what's called self-insured, so they didn't have to offer mandated benefits. And so we still didn't have coverage. So I took some classes at a university, and I had coverage that way. It wasn't great coverage, but it was better than nothing. And we did 2 IVF cycles that way. And we ended up with chemical pregnancies. And then we also paid to have genetic testing done of embryos, and insurance doesn't cover that at all. So it was still quite expensive to move forward. So we had to kind of space things out so we could afford things. And then also just the emotional toll. At one point, before moving to Massachusetts, we had lived in the state of Texas. And at that point, we were going through classes to be foster parents. And then we ended up moving to Massachusetts and found out there was that we could have some form of coverage through the university. So we decided to try on our own. And then we kind of caught the bug. Then we wanted to keep on trying because we felt like we were so close. And it, it was just such an emotional toll. And for me, I felt like the lower, less invasive medication really kind of made me crazy, like the Clomid, the clomiphene. So it was very, very difficult physically, emotionally. My husband and I started going to counseling together. because somehow we just never seemed to be on the same page. Like when I wanted to stop, he wanted to keep trying. When I wanted to keep trying, he wanted to stop. And we eventually ended up taking, I stopped taking classes. And so we bought non-group insurance policy, which was extremely expensive, but it was less expensive than an IVF cycle. Mm-hmm. So we did that. And on my fourth, I'm sorry, I feel like I'm a little bit choppy, but there's so much to the history. So I'll back up and say, after my second IVF cycle, they realized that there was one blood test that they hadn't run on me. And it turned out I had a blood clotting disorder.
Oh my gosh.
Called a prothrombin gene mutation. So basically what was happening is when an embryo would start to attach and develop, my body thought something foreign was attacking it. And so it cut off the blood supply to the embryos. And so I would miscarry.
Wow.
Yeah. So in total, we ended up seeking treatment at 4 different IVF clinics. Mm-hmm. The 4th IVF clinic treated us for our 4th, 5th, and 6th cycle. The 4th cycle was my daughter. And we ended up transferring all of our embryos because we stopped doing the genetic testing. We couldn't afford it. And she started out as a twin, and then we ended up just having her. It was a high-risk pregnancy, which interestingly, I didn't find out until later, which I'll come back to, why I believe it was high risk. But then after the birth of my daughter, we did another IVF cycle and transferred all the embryos, and I became pregnant with a singleton. But the heartbeat stopped, and we did genetic testing, and it turned out it was a Down syndrome, genetically Down syndrome. Now, by this time, I'm 36. So then we do another IVF cycle, and we transfer all the embryos, because again, money is an issue. We don't want to keep trying to do IVF over and over again because we really can't afford it. And we ended up with triplets. And I wasn't nervous because I felt like, well, with my daughter, she started out as a multiple and we ended up with one. Mm-hmm. And the next cycle, we had multiple embryos. We ended up with one. Mm-hmm. So then we just transferred them all again with my son, and there were triplets.
Wow.
And they kept growing. And my cervix was already starting to thin. So we saw 3 different specialists who suggested we do something called a selective reduction. And for anybody who's trying to become a parent through infertility treatment and all you want to do is have kids, the idea of doing a selective reduction is probably one of the most horrific things. But the truth was, if we didn't, we were going to lose them all.
Oh my God.
So we saw a specialist in New York he's amazing. He was so wonderful because he knew how heart-wrenching this is, and did genetic testing on all 3 embryos, and one of them didn't survive the CVS genetic testing. And then it was still recommended that we reduce to 1. And so the doctor made the decision of where to do the reduction. And I have to say, it was not only one of the most emotionally painful things I've done, but one of the most physically painful things I've done. And I've been through labor, so that was really difficult.
This was all in New York with this specialist that you were just referring to, who was incredible? Or
yes.
Was this, and what was, just, I bet people may want to know do you remember his name or her name?
His name is Mark Evans.
Okay.
His name is Mark Evans. He is a remarkable, not only a remarkable doctor, but a person. And one of the things I noticed in his office is he has a picture of him shaking hands with the Pope.
Oh, wow. Yep.
Right?
Yep. That says a lot.
Yeah, not the current one, of course,
Right,
Pope
right.
Paul, but that does say a lot. And so he was incredibly warm. And by the way, the reason we went to him is the doctors in Massachusetts who do selective reductions, they wouldn't do the genetic testing on triplets. They would only do it on twins. And the research that all of these doctors pointed to was research conducted by Dr. Evans. So I thought, why not go to the expert in the field? And he was great. So we ended up doing this, and then I was pregnant with my son and ended up having a high-risk pregnancy with him as well. Just like with my pregnancy with my daughter, about 24 weeks, I had to go on bed rest. The only thing is I got an infection when I was pregnant with my son, and at 28 weeks pregnancy, and he ended up being born 3 months early. So he was in the NICU for 11 weeks, and he's had a lot of physical problems. He's had some mental health, which tends to go with being premature. Those kids have a higher risk of ADHD. My feeling was it didn't need to be that way.
Right.
Right.
All of our decisions were transfer as many embryos as possible. And you know how I said, we kind of caught the bug. As soon as my son was born, I said to my husband, I want to do this again. I know I can do better next time. I know it. I know what to do next time to make it right. And my husband was like, no way. He's like, no way. I'm done.
Right.
But we did go to the doctor and we asked him, okay, what if we wanted to freeze some embryos, and then later on, if we felt more emotionally healed or, so forth, because I was 38 when my son was born, and it was interesting. The doctor said to me, before you came to our clinic, your pregnancy success rate with IVF was 0%. And when we treated you here, you had 100% pregnancy with your IVF cycles.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
They were able to treat the blood clotting problem. Was that what they pointed to with respect to the success then, or?
I think there were multiple things. So in my first 3 cycles, I did not do acupuncture, and I would produce maybe 5 follicles, and then 4 or 5. And then when I did acupuncture, my follicle count was like 9.
Okay. Interesting.
Yes. And so I had lots of embryos to transfer, not 9, but still a lot. And more than what is recommended by doctors. And I forget what I was saying now. I'm so sorry. That he was saying about, I went from 0% success to 100% success. I think part of it is the fact that I was put on a blood thinner.
Yeah.
But part of it is that I did the acupuncture and I did meditation, which I had not done in my first 3 cycles. And I had done a mind-body program and before my 4th, and I was religious about it. And I did everything before my 4th cycle. I spoke to a psychic healer. I did anything and everything that I thought would bring me good luck. So here's the interesting thing. After the birth of my son, and I started becoming more involved with infertility in the business realm of it, I had read an article that said, if you had had a certain procedure done on your cervix, it can weaken the cervix during in subsequent pregnancies or when you try to have a baby. And I had surgeries on my cervix, not only surgeries, but like a testing called I think it's a colposcope, where they it looks like little jaws, and it takes some tissue from your cervix. And I don't think that women are told about that or warned about that when they have these procedures.
What was that procedure for? Was that the endometriosis, or was that for something else?
That was, and I'm fine being completely open. So that was actually for HPV.
Oh, okay.
That thing that.
Yep, I have that too.
Every woman. Well, interesting, actually, after all those surgeries never worked, I went to a homeopath, and he gave me a remedy for HPV. And I have not had any HPV, and I've had all normal PAPs since, gosh, what was that, 1992.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I was like, but I didn't know this.
Right.
I mean, and so, when people say, oh, infertility can lead to high-risk pregnancies, and, I just want to know in that opinion, or if there is ever any research, which I don't think there is any research out there, but if they ever did do research, are they looking at who has had surgery,
right,
or who has had that testing on their cervix prior to infertility
right,
treatment and pregnancies?
Well, it's also too what you had referred to. So you've got that issue, and then you also have this issue about the fact that I believe you went through 2 IVFs before they did the testing regarding your blood clotting problem.
Yes.
I just don't know. I mean, yes, I guess in retrospect, it's always easy to say, well, they should have done that in the beginning, and it's hard you can't do all the tests under the world. But, it's like, it really stems to this fact that we cannot rely on, we really need to be our own advocate, really doing our own research, really pointing to our history, medical histories, and trying to piece together the little pieces of information that may then add up to a decision or information that the doctors may have overlooked.
Absolutely. And I think, there is a lot of frustration, I think, on my husband's end, where he just had a hard time letting that go, that the clinics had missed the blood test.
Mm-hmm.
And so, which was one reason we switched to another clinic. And then, so the third clinic, they were very nice and they're very reputable. And I really like the doctor. But the truth was, the way that particular practice worked, they recommended a IVF technique for me that required me to wear a patch, right, of hormones. The only problem is I'm allergic to adhesive. So I said, well, I'm allergic to adhesive. I think that would be very difficult for me. And if my body is trying to fight, an allergy, I feel like it's not putting the energy of trying to get pregnant. And the doctor said, well, we met as a clinic, and this is what we decided as a team. Mm-hmm. So this is our recommendation going forward. So that's when I went to the fourth clinic for an opinion. And, I went to that doctor and I said, all right, this is what this clinic says. This is what another clinic says. What would you recommend? And the doctor said, well, I wouldn't recommend this, and here's why. And I wouldn't recommend that, and here's why. Here's what I would recommend, and here's why. And I fell in love with the doctor. I'm like, you are exactly what I need.
And this is Mark Evans again, right?
No.
Oh, okay.
So Mark Evans, he did the
selective reduction.
Got it. So if it's okay to say, I will tell you, I ended up seeing Dr. Brian Berger And he's the one that I fell in love with. And it had nothing to do with the fact that he has a wonderful South African accent. It's just the way he listened, and I absolutely felt like an individual.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's so important, right? Oh gosh, in that situation.
Now, I have to tell you, Dr. Berger was not a big fan of us transferring multiple embryos.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, in my experience, I now understand for a very good reason. They don't want patients to have to go through what we went through.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that now, but it was really hard to see that when I was going through it all and when money was such a factor for us. But the truth is, we've spent far more now on healthcare for my son than we would have if we had paid for IVF out of pocket and transferred fewer embryos.
Right.
In retrospect, you can say that, but at the time, it's really difficult to step back and see that. And they were extremely supportive of us when we went through it. But I can say his clinic now has changed their policy, so nobody does what I did anymore.
Right.
So, I'm like,
Davina, let me just take a step back because your story, right, is just, there's so many twists and turns.
Yeah.
I mean, if we were to, lay down the numbers, and maybe you've done this math or not, but if you look at, the number of IVFs, so I think we said 4 IVFs, multiple miscarriages,
Yeah.
but not only miscarriages, but also you've had pregnancies where you've had, what do you call it? Twins and triplets where you end up, having to lose some of those pregnancies. You've had no insurance through all of this. You've had the selective reduction that you had to go through. How in the world did you manage through this? I just can't imagine. All I can think of, and I've been writing down notes as we've been talking, and I just put in big, huge letters, resilience. And so what can you say to others that are now, currently going through this and just, having to figure out emotionally how to just get up every single day and keep fighting. And fighting is not the right word, but keep embracing the journey with positivity.
I used to not be there, and I had a very good friend of mine. Actually, we'd known each other. We were good friends in high school, and we lost touch. And then a friend in common had said, "Hey, Julie's going through IVF." And so she and I connected, and she had this unwavering faith that she was going to be a mom. One way or another, it was going to happen. And that she was just going for it and had nothing to lose. And if one path didn't work out, then she was going to work another. And I struggled with that. I struggled with that for a long time. And finally, I think, I really don't know what it was. I don't know what the switch was. I think, possibly meditating, talking to other people who had been experiencing the same thing,
right,
and seeing their success. I think actually even acupuncture, because when I did acupuncture, my menstrual cycles used to range from 28 to 42 days.
Mm-hmm.
It was so hard to tell when I was ovulating. And then I started acupuncture, and I was 30 days, 30 days, 30 days, 30 days.
Wow. Why do you think that is? We can just pause here for a second.
I think it just balances the hormones.
Mm-hmm.
I think it resets everything to get the organs to be working the way that they're supposed to, the blood to work as it's supposed to. It just completely reset itself. And I have to tell you, with my blood clotting disorder, I now know, didn't know this before, I now know at this age, I can never take estrogen.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So when I go through menopause, I can't take estrogen. I'm going to acupuncture.
Yes. Yes. My sister, actually, Susan, who's involved with Circle+Bloom, is doing that. And she highly recommends it. She went from having night sweats and really bad symptoms to it really minimizing dramatically. And that's all she's doing.
Yeah, and that's great. And that is my plan. That's my path. And so I think what happened, maybe because I saw that there was still change possible in my health,
Right.
with my cycle changing, I did start to feel more hopeful again.
Right.
And then my friend Julie did become pregnant. And I think it was just a click for me of, you know what? I am going to be a mom no matter what. And my husband and I said we would try on our own first. And if that didn't work, we were going to adopt. And, we had this plan. And so I felt like nothing was going to stop me. And if we miscarried, and by the way, I had 6 IVF cycles. So Bella was my 4th, the Down syndrome was the 5th, and then my son was the 6th. And even after, I miscarried between my daughter and my son, I felt like, you know what? That child was not meant to be in my arms. Mm-hmm. And I am a parent, and, if it happens, great. And if not, I'm so blessed. But I wanted to try again. I wanted to try for a sibling. And it just happened to be just this really comfort that it was, instead of so you're still on a roller coaster, right? The ups and the downs.
Sure.
You're excited, you're depressed. Of going through infertility, it was like a kiddie roller coaster. There was still a little bit of up and down, but it was more, it wasn't as scary. It was more stable feeling. So it just changed the whole journey altogether. And I'm not an extremely religious person. I mean, I believe in God, but I wasn't going, to, practice my faith in any kind of establishment or organization. But I just found this faith. And it kind of carried me. Whether it was a placebo effect or not, I don't care.
Right.
It worked.
So you had the support of your husband, clearly, even though you'd said you'd gone through couples therapy, but still, I'm sure the decisions, and same with Matt and I, it was that same. I mean, you go through these very difficult conversations, and I found at least that, Matt just kind of wanted to fix things, all the time and make me feel better. And so there's a couples dynamic there, but I think reaching out, which is not something I actually did, and it sounds like you definitely relied on this, but reaching out to others. And this is before the social media, online community opportunity that people have now, which is fantastic. I mean, we have a very, very private community. Anybody listening, if they would like to join, all you got to do is email us. Joanna@circlebloom.com, and we can help you get on there, but it's a very private invite only. Can't search for it. So it really retains that exclusive, not even exclusivity, confidentiality, where, 400 women are sharing their most intimate feelings and struggles and getting the support from the community. I've been on Instagram lately, and just jumping on Instagram, creating an account where, you can use whatever username you want. There's tagging going on. So TTC community, TTC pound, TTC sisters. And again, the sharing going on in the community, and people posting and people commenting and liking. It's really fantastic, I think, what's going on. I mean, yeah, I think it just smooths it out. As you said, it gives you that you're still on a roller coaster. I love that analogy. You're still on a roller coaster, but it's kind of smoothed out. It's not as big and scary because you've got that support system.
That's right. Oh, I'm sorry to.
No, keep going. Keep going.
So, but I was just gonna touch on the marital aspect. I have to say, after my husband had his diagnosis and we knew he needed to have a surgery, he kept coming up with reasons of why he wasn't doing a surgery, and it really impacted the trust in our relationship. At
Right.
one point, and of course, what you hear from so many people, I thought maybe we're not meant to be married. Maybe, we'll be able to have kids with other people. And we did not get it together. We did not get it together. And we were probably, for a month, we were separated just before our 3-year anniversary. And but of course we just loved each other so much. We went to counseling. We're like, you know what? We need to figure this out. We need to figure out how it's going to work. And we became, excuse me, we became this incredible team. We became this team against infertility and how we were going to survive this, and not only survive it, but still be able to be a couple and best friends and enjoy each other. And my gosh, it's challenging.
That's beautiful, though. I mean, it's a beautiful story now in retrospect. I know it wasn't while you're going through it, but I'm sure your marriage is rock solid now, which, is something to be said for that. I want to get to fertility within reach. But I first want to touch on, we talked about the acupuncture. We talked about the support network that's so vital. You had touched a few times on meditation and mind body, and I'd like to find out what you did, because when you were going through it, Circle+Bloom didn't exist, and I'm sure you would have used our programs.
I would have.
I just want to hear what you did and why you think it worked for you.
Well, I did 2 types of meditation guidance. One was focusing on body parts and relaxing the various body parts, starting from my head down to my toes. And then the other was like a guided imagery. And I did that before I went to bed every night and before I got out of bed every morning. And it was just a very peaceful way. And I felt I really needed that because, I don't know, I can be a little bit anxious to begin with. But after having so many miscarriages, and then I was pregnant, I was terrified every day that I was going to miscarry.
Right.
And then when I did start having contractions, I started counting every contraction, which probably, it was not the best, way to kind of focus on the fear. But the meditation that gave me 2 times each day where...
How did you learn these meditations?
I went to a mind-body program.
Okay.
And it talked about what I really took away from the mind body program. And I know there are these all over the country, they exist. So you participate in a mind body program and you kind of learn that, at least I'll speak for myself. I learned I was more than my infertility. I lost myself. I truly lost that I was more than someone desperately trying to have a baby. And so I was reminded what I had learned in college about physiology and how you can kind of change the chemicals in your brain and your heart rate and your blood flow and
great job.
I know.
Love it.
But it was just this and it's an opportunity to rest. And I am a go, go, go kind of person where from the moment I wake up until I crash at night, I'm doing something. So taking the time or making the time to meditate for me it was great for me, but I also felt like I was giving a gift to my,
oh, that's beautiful.
When I was pregnant, I felt like I was giving a gift to my unborn child.
That's beautiful to think about it that way. Yeah, just it's so interesting. A lot of women who use our either natural cycle program or any of our other fertility based programs to help them get pregnant, once they do get pregnant, I think 90% of them, we look at the numbers every now and then, go ahead and purchase our pregnancy program, which is, just like what you had said, which is that anxiety does not stop and that stress. And you want to continue to do that for yourself and for your body to make sure that all kind of just stays nice and even keeled, and to handle the stress. So that's very interesting. Well, that's great. I mean, I think that, again, the visualizations, and which is why Circle+Bloom really exists, because I found that in my own personal life and the research that I had done, if we were to offer something that tracked to the cycle, so you're actually visualizing, and you're absolutely right to go through each body part in relaxation, really brings down the heart rate and really just relaxes everything. But then to take it a step further and visualize what your body should be doing during each day of the cycle is a very powerful tool. That it's almost like my people talk about their reason, to get up in the morning to like shout from the rooftops. And that's one of it for me. And it's because it's one of these placebo, why does the placebo work? It's the mind-body connection. It's something that many doctors, very prolific doctors talk about, the mind-body connection, but it's just not something that people are used to or understand. They, having difficulty wrapping their head around it, or even how to leverage it. So that's my passion, is to get these tools into the hands of anybody really who has a health issue that wants to explore this as a way to, as a way to help. So that's awesome. And so you and I both have a similar life situation with respect to taking our fertility and infertility journey and then building something out of it. So coming out the other side and saying, oh my gosh, what did I just go through? Dusting ourselves off, being successful in building a family, and then wanting to do something to help the next, the women behind us, the couples behind us, now struggling as the 1 in 6 number. 1 in 6 couples are experiencing some form of infertility. How can we, do things to help that next generation? Generation is not the right word, but the next group of couples coming in. So let's talk about Fertility Within Reach. And I was on the board. I'm very proud of that. So I was involved for, I think, a couple of years, and very proud to work with you on that. So give us a quick update. What are y'all working on? We'll definitely have it in the show notes where people can reach out to you and reach out to Fertility Within Reach. And maybe if you can just give us a synopsis of what you're focused on.
Well, thank you. I am actually really excited about what is going on with Fertility Within Reach, but I will just back up and let people know that our organization works to increase access to infertility insurance benefits. And whether it's educating an infertility patient how to advocate for themselves, or with us speaking directly with policymakers who we consider to be employers, legislators, and insurers, we take an approach that providing infertility benefits is a win-win-win situation for everybody. Honestly, when I share with an employer my personal story and, put forth that instead of the employer covering I think at the time back then, reimbursement for an IVF cycle was like $7,500. Instead of paying $7,500, they have spent hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars for the care of my son. And I'm just one patient now, or the spouse of one employee. Imagine that with all the employees they have, 1 in 6, So I think what we do is on our website, we provide step-by-step instructions on how somebody can communicate effectively with their employer, their insurer, their legislator. But then we found that some people, even though they have the steps of how to do it, they just don't have time. They either just bought a house or they started a new job and they just can't do it. So then they have the ability to hire us to help them for additional services. We give everybody like a free 20-minute consultation where we help them strategize what's the best way to try to get insurance benefits for yourself. Or if they don't want to advocate for themselves, help them figure out what are their best financial assistance options available to them. And then we give them all the resources. So what we also...
And just to be clear, I didn't mean to interrupt, but you guys are a completely non-for-profit entity.
Non-for-profit entity. I've not taken a salary in 5 years. So this is a labor of love. And literally, I refer to it as, this is what I found to be the purpose to my past pain. Everything happens for a reason, I believe. And if I had not experienced those losses, or the frustration or the anger or the desperation, I would not be as motivated and prepared to help people in the future, now and in the future. So I started this organization because I had great experience lobbying for legislation to increase access to infertility benefits. And I had a mentor at the Massachusetts State House, and I felt like he taught me so many important key things that I think most people don't know when they're advocating for themselves. I just felt like I needed to share this with everybody so they could be their own best advocate. So, so they didn't have to feel helpless. I think that was one of the things I felt as an infertility patient. I felt like I had no control over my body, and it was infuriating and depressing. And so this is a path to empowerment. Fertility Within Reach can empower people, whether they do it themselves to advocate for benefits, or they utilize our services, like helping them write a letter or proofread a letter that they write, or give them research that they can use in their letter to support why they should have benefits. We provide all that. And then but we are now looking at we did workshops last summer, and we took videos from those workshops. So we are reducing, kind of consolidating or making the content more concise. We're going to have it on our website. It'll be available on YouTube, so people can access this information on tips on how to advocate for yourself, how to access the insurance benefits. And then also we're going to start doing a Google Hangout series where I can interview people on, how to lobby for infertility benefits, or how to understand your insurance benefits, to read your insurance plan.
So one, Davina, because let me just say, the one thing that I find surprising, and this is your major focus. So let's just talk through it a second. When somebody so they don't have insurance, or the insurance that they have maybe will cover, a sliver of what they need, there is the opportunity for them to go in and either talk to their employer, talk to their insurance company, and actually gain additional benefits? I mean, actually help, their financial situation. So something is possible with that. I think a lot of times people think, well, this is it. This is all I get. And there's no way for me to do anything about it. So I think it's even surprising to say, yes, you can advocate, you can do X, Y, and Z to help your situation.
Yeah. So what our organization did is we teamed up with a health communications graduate student from Emerson College, and we did research with employers, legislators, and insurers, and said, what information do you need to support infertility health benefits? And they told us. And then we also asked them some other questions in general. And one of the things we learned from employers is they basically work with insurance brokers. And a broker will go to the employer and say, here's a sample of 3 or 4 insurance plans we recommend you use. And the employer will usually pick one of those plans. Now, the employer could say, could I also see a plan that covers infertility? And the insurance broker might come back with a plan, and it's really expensive. And the employer says, oh, no way, I don't want to offer this benefit. But what the employer doesn't know is they can actually go back to the broker and say, I want to see a different plan. I want you to find me a plan that will work with my company. Or they could offer the plan that they are providing their employees, but also add an additional plan that has infertility benefits included, but the cost might be different to the employee. But that gets to be the employee's choice of whether they want to pick that up or maybe pay a little bit more. But the truth is, just like in my example, it's actually more beneficial to insurers for there to be IVF benefits offered. There's a white paper out by Optum Insurance that specifically communicates to employers that offering IVF benefits is a good thing. The vice president of operations for Aetna has said that it increases the chances of safe pregnancies and healthy babies.
Interesting.
Because the research shows people like me who didn't have mandated coverage, you transfer more embryos. And with more embryos, there are greater risks. So, we try to share this information not only with these policymakers, but we give it to the patients so they can advocate on their own behalf, or they can. I've traveled to New York City and met with the HR team of a very large nonprofit, 1,800 employees, to talk about how offering IVF benefits is in their best interest. And they really appreciated the information. They felt like it would help them present that to the executives and make a strong case.
Right.
Yes.
Interesting.
So they're more open than they realize, that just HRs or employers kind of go by what everybody hears, what the myths are, that that IVF is expensive and it's not natural. And the truth is, it is actually one of the more affordable options versus a patient not having benefits.
Interesting.
And so people just have to be educated, and that's what we're here for.
Is there anything else, and that's terrific, is there anything else that you would like to share about fertility within reach before we wrap it up? What I would like to say about fertility within reach is it is an amazing resource for people who, whether you want to advocate for yourself or not. We have an entire section on financial assistance, which talks about grants or crowdfunding or financing, because not everybody feels like fighting. So if they decide that they want to
fund their treatment themselves, it's a resource for them as well.
Great. Well, I think we have covered, unless there's something else that you would like to share, but I think we've covered a ton. And you shine such a bright light in this very, I would call it serious, but that's not even the right word, but it's just a very difficult situation for so many couples across, the country, across the world. But you shine such a bright and very friendly light to everybody. And the fact that you have done so much with Fertility Within Reach and all the advocacy that you're doing in DC as well, it's just so awe-inspiring. So you have a huge fan from me and from Circle+Bloom, and we will absolutely post all of this information for folks, as well as sharing more of your background story, which I think in and of itself speaks volumes about who you are as a person and the resilience that you've shown, and the fact that you're the mother to two absolutely gorgeous children, a daughter and a son. And I see them a lot on Facebook, so I know.
I can't help it.
I know, you're adorable. You really are. You set a great example for others. So, well, thank you, Davina.
Thank you. Thank you for all you do, and including the work of Fertility Within Reach. And I'm so grateful. And I love that people who visit Circle+Bloom, that they know that I'm just overwhelmed by what you do, really, because I think the emotional component is like the foundation to help make the physical not only possible but bearable. And so I love that people have already found you. I hope others continue to find you. I know I'll help do what I can to make that a reality. I'm just so grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Davina. This was fantastic.
Thank you. Likewise.
Okay, Davina, we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Take care.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.